Havoc Demon Hunter on the Dragonflight beta. Is it better? Is it changed in a more amazing way? Well, this is what we are going to be talking about today in this coverage of the latest changes for Havoc, where things have been moved around quite a bit, at least since our last take on the edgy edgelord Spec of the Demon Hunter. And hey, if you like the content that you see here, consider checking it while we play it live on twitch.tv/Marcelian&Online, where we get to play with you guys, dungeons, raids, and other things, beta and live content, and you get to chat with us directly and see what we think about various topics that we don't put into videos. Haha, twitch.tv/Marcelian&Online. Check it out. Now let's go into the Havoc details, and we just recently covered Vengeance as well, and we went a little bit into the general talent tree, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. So if you want to go there, go check it out. First of all, obviously Blur is out and has become baseline, and Fellblade is now a choice node with Aura of Pain. So the synergy that these talents offer is a little bit weird, because obviously they're both really good for what they do, and Fellblade has been a consistent option to take when you played the Fellblade Demon Blades playstyle, because Fellblade offered an extra source of Fury, which is particularly good. Another thing that we didn't touch that much last time, since it was a little bit difficult to test and it was particularly weird, but now the sigils, because obviously from the general talent tree you do have access to Sigil of Flame, and since then, I don't know if it initially was like this, but since then it now generates Fury, and having an extra source of Fury can be really good, especially depending on how you build your Havoc Demon Hunter and how much stats and gear you have at the beginning of the expansion, because building Fury is usually a problem that you have at the beginning of the expansion. And with cooking, sigils can be a nice addition to your toolkit. It will end up dealing decent amount of damage, especially since you have Elysian Decree in the talent tree that can also explode with some of the other talents that we will talk about eventually. So it could be a thing that Havoc will end up doing. So keep that in mind. Also, the new talent that replaced the Desperate Instincts, which is now, I believe, in the Spec tree, is Collective Anguish, the legendary that we have right now in Shadowlands. So that's also really good. It's more burst damage. It's something that you are already using as a Venthyr Havoc in Shadowlands. But it is a cool mechanic that we will be able to use it in Dragonflight as well. And with that out of the way, let's actually talk about the Spec tree. And like I mentioned, a lot of the talents have kind of been swapped around. And this is a theme that, like I said in the Vengeance video as well, is a theme that we see recurring with a lot of other specs to make the overall spec more cohesive, to make it make sense, so that it's obvious to you where you want to go, and depending on what you want to do and how you want to build your own Havoc Demon Hunter. And the first thing that you might notice, if you've seen our previous video, if you have checked the talent tree so far, is that Demon Blades is a choice node with Insatiable Hunger right off the bat at the top of the talent tree, so that you can essentially choose which one you want. And these are essentially optional choices because they're a dead end. They don't lead into anything else. I wouldn't call them a waste of a point. Obviously, they're particularly good, and you've always had one or the other in the last couple of expansions anyway. Personally, I am a fan of Demon Blades because I don't particularly like spamming demons by that much, but hey, to each our own, right? And also another change is that improved Fell Rush is now on the left-hand side, which again makes more sense considering that most, if not all, of the Fell Rush talents are on the left-hand side of the talent tree. Demonic Appetite made its way back as well, and it will help you with one of the capsules, which is Shattered Destiny, in maintaining high Fury consumption and uptime on your demon, which is something that Demonic Appetite has kind of always done, although it went through a couple of iterations in the last couple of expansions. But now, under a different mechanic, it will still funnel or perpetuate the demon uptime that you would like as a Havoc Demon Hunter that probably everybody else likes. And like I mentioned, the Desperate Instincts, since it has been removed from the general talent tree, it's now here on the left-hand side, and it's a choice node with Netherwalk, which I guess it's a good choice node. You don't want too many nodes to be defensives in a DPS talent tree, so having to choose between one of the two is good. You don't have to waste too many points, and I don't know if Desperate Instincts were ever taken. However, now it makes Blur reduce damage taken by an additional 10%, which is something that Vengeance would have really loved. And additionally, you automatically trigger Blur with 50% reduced cooldown and duration when you fall below 35% health. So this could be kind of like a cheat death. It's decent. although this puts Blur usually on cooldown unless they will change this going forward. So again, you don't have your defensive on demand, and this can proc without you wanting. Maybe you are supposed to go below 35% health and not die, so this Spirit Instincts is weird, but I guess you would probably account for that and take Nether Walk or neither instead. Now, Chaotic Transformation has been moved way up, and that's pretty good because it's a really cool mechanic that we have enjoyed since, I believe, BFA, since it was an Azurite trait, and it has swapped the places with Furious Gaze, which is a little bit lower down. Now, one thing that I'm not particularly a fan of is that below Chaotic Transformation you have Look, Scan, Kill, and that's a dead end instead of leading to Furious Gaze. And Look, Scan, Kill is like, I don't really see why you wouldn't want to take this ever unless you're building heavy crit. Maybe that's why it's a dead end, since there are talents that facilitate a heavy crit investment in terms of stats and gear, which obviously make the Look, Scan, Kill talent a little less than ideal, but I digress. Cycle of Hatred is arguably more accessible as well, since it is central in the middle of the talent tree, although it is way down the bottom, leading into Shattered Destiny, which is the talent that I mentioned that will maintain a high uptime on your demonic. But it does make sense for Cycle of Hatred to lead into Shattered Destiny, since they kind of work with each other, seeing as how Cycle of Hatred reduces the cooldown of I-Beam and how likely you are to be playing the demonic talent in the general talent tree, making I-Beam give you the demon form, aka going into the Shattered Destiny playstyle where you constantly consume the Fury and maintain high uptime on your demon, which right now, as we've been able to test it out, it's about 50% of the time, which is good considering that your demonic demon form is a core aspect of your playstyle and it's a big ass cooldown. Now, something that's a little bit weird is about the momentum build, and momentum was prior to this video at the very least, although it has gone a couple of changes. It's no longer a capstone. Doesn't work with Glide anymore either, which thank God for that. But it has been moved a little bit higher up, and it was replaced with a buffed up Essence Break, which is now the capstone, which I guess maybe that's cool because Essence Break is a cool mechanic. But then again, we'll have to see if it turns out to be tuned properly, because going into momentum, you also have a bunch of other stuff that synergize really well with it. First of all, you have Unbound Chaos, which really worked well with momentum, considering that you want Fell Rush to be an active part of your rotation. And you also have Tactical Retreat, which is something that was making momentum decent in the past. But Tactical Retreat is also contentious since it does make you lose uptime on the boss. And if you also go into Shattered Destiny, because now you can play demonic with momentum, this might kind of work against that, since Shattered Destiny is very, very specific in how much uptime you want to be on the boss. You don't really want to waste a single cooldown, global cooldown that is, in generating or consuming Fury. But then again, maybe if you don't play demonic and instead play demonic origin, you can have a big burst every 2 minutes if you like this type of playstyle. So there are some options, and all falls down in the end to how competitive and well they work with each other. A weird kind of change is that Relentless Onslaught was moved all the way to the right-hand side, where arguably all of the AoE things are, and obviously Relentless Onslaught really works with spamming Chaos Strike, which is something that you don't do very much in AoE, but you know, you occasionally do. But Relentless Onslaught is something that you maybe want more in single target, where you spam exclusively Chaos Strike sometimes with certain builds. Bombardment has been removed, to the major sadness of Marcelian, who loved this, and I also really enjoyed the playstyle as well. But they've mentioned in a blue post that this is not something that they want Havoc to have as a core mechanic of the playstyle, and it was actually replaced with Moarg Bionics, which increased glaive throws damage for every enemy hit, with the maximum amount of damage being on the third target, depending on if you've talented Bouncing Glaive and Master of Glaive with the target's hit. Now, Moarg Bionics, I believe it reminds me of the first best legendary that Havoc had in Legion, where Throw Glaive was dealing a lot of damage, and of course this goes down into other glaive mechanics. And Furious Throws was also added as an effect to the bombardment removal, which this is a little bit higher up in the talent tree, and it makes Throw Glaive consume Fury, so it's no longer essentially a filler for the Fell Blade playstyle anywhere, for the Demon Blades playstyle. So consuming Fury is different. I've played with it, it's fun, it's a different spin to the rotation, and of course if you do pick this, you'll likely pick all the other talents, which the one that I wanted to talk about as well is Soul Rend, that makes Throw Glaive cause the target to take additional 60% of damage dealt as chaos over 6 seconds. It used to be a bleed in its original mechanic. I think this was part of the legendary that I mentioned back in Legion, if I recall correctly. So it's interesting. I mean, it does add the mechanic of throw glaive, which I actually like in terms of adding another button to the playstyle, because, you know, we know the stereotypical Havoc Demon Hunter has 2 buttons to press, right? Growing Inferno has been made a 2-pointer, and I don't know about that. I mean, nobody's really a fan of 2-pointers, but I guess it would mirror the left-hand side on Bound Chaos. That also is a 2-pointer, so we'll see. Burning Wound has been changed, improved, some would say, and now it actually works with Throw Glaive as well, but it is kind of capped on 3 targets. So although now, or at least the past patches of Shadowlands, Burning Wound being a legendary, you would target swap to apply this to as many targets in AoE as possible, although at one point it was the single target legendary to go for. Now it only goes on 3 targets, but hey, you can apply it with Throw Glaive, which is probably what you would want to apply it with. Being on only 3 targets is something that we need to sim to see if that's fair, because it's 3 targets, considering that you're already attacking the main target with, you know, your Demon's Bite, arguably, or your Demon Blades, which would probably replace the first activator of Burning Wound, then essentially you would only need to put it on 2 extra targets, and considering that Throw Glaive hits more, then you would kind of waste weirdly. So I would like to see with Burning Wood maybe the general talent tree that gives you an extra target for Throw Glaive as well, to maybe add an extra Burning Wound as well, but we'll see exactly how it works out. Rage Fire is further down from Burning Wood now, and it's still pretty cool. It makes it particularly be incredibly amazing in very large packs, considering that right now still I don't see this being target capped, at least not in the tooltip, unless they wanted to be target capped, but they didn't update the tooltip as well. Father to the Flame has also been made a choice node now with Elysian Decree, and it's a little bit higher up. We've tested it. It's kind of cool, but again, it's RNG. So basically what this does is it has a chance to spawn a demon, just like the Necrolord ability, but it's a chance. And when you kill it, you gain an extra damage buff as you consume just a demon soul as a demon hunter, but also explodes in AoE and does decent amount of damage. Decent, but maybe not as much as Elysian Decree. Not to mention that it's soft cap at 5 targets. And the reason why I say it might not be competitive with Elysian Decree is because, well, first of all, Elysian Decree does decent amount of damage. It shatters soul fragments, which is probably something that's better for Vengeance than it is for Havoc, although it's still good for Havoc as well, especially if you play stuff like Demonic Appetite, because when you consume soul fragments, you gain Fury, so there is synergy there. And most of all, Elysian Decree has probably been made amazing, which is probably always going to be the plan, but last time we couldn't really test it out. Would the capstone any means necessary that makes all the other school magic types damage that you do be chaos instead? So seeing as how Elysian Decree is arcane, it will be chaos if you take any means necessary. The reason why this is important is because the mastery increases chaos damage dealt. So this would increase the value of Elysian Decree, and right now, unless we're due for some tuning on Elysian Decree slaps pretty hard. So with any means necessary, of course, and it might justify in the future a way to build Havoc by taking Mastery, considering that right now in Season 4, Mastery is a dog shit stat with Havoc, and we're not new to this type of mentality. So this is kind of it so far. I mean, it's looking amazing. I am actually excited about Havoc so far as if the tuning is going right, I would consider Havoc as being an alt, because there are a lot of mechanics that now I can play with without sacrificing too much. I'm obviously a big fan of momentum, as I've said in the past couple of years, and seeing that I can choose certain things and not sacrifice too much is good. There are a couple of other paths here. Certain things, certain core mechanics are basically split apart. For instance, momentum is way on the left-hand side, although you could probably play momentum and get a bunch of other capstones and the mechanics to play with. It's cool. It's surprisingly more complex than what I have expected, and what probably a lot of other people expected, and it's looking like a much better spec overall, more completed spec to finally crush the stereotype of Havoc being a simple 2-button spec playstyle. But what do you guys think? Do you think Havoc is going to be something that you would consider in Dragonflight? Let us know in the comment section below. Once again, if you'd like to see us play all of these, check our twitch.tv/Marcelian online. We stream about 4 to 5 days a week, and we play with you guys, especially if you're on EU. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you, patrons, for supporting our content, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.